That's the subject of tonight's Waters Words. Fear gives them power. That's what Democrats do. Make you so scared that they can control you. They want to keep us in a forever pandemic. So the left isn't doing the one thing they always tell you to do: follow the science. The CDC issuing guidance this week telling vaccinated Americans to wear masks indoors in public places with high cases. Do average Americans follow case counts county by county? No. Case counts are kind of irrelevant at this point. If you're vaxxed, this virus isn't deadly anymore. Your chance of catching COVID is small. And there's more than a 99% chance you won't die from it or even go to the hospital. Out of 161 million Americans who've been vaccinated, just a little over 1,000 have died. These are CDC numbers. And almost all these deaths were older Americans with health problems. Now, any death is one too many, but big picture. You have a 0.0007% chance of dying from COVID if you're vaxxed. Low risk there is an understatement. You have a bigger chance of dying from a car crash, whose death rate is 0.0009%, but we still get in the car every day, don't we? But the left's hysterical. They're just being absolute Karens about all this. And they can't stop yelling about how some people aren't getting vaxxed. So they're just deciding to punish everybody. The left keeps talking about COVID cases are up, but they're not talking about the low number of deaths. The average is just a couple hundred deaths a day in the U.S. This is the least deadly month since the pandemic began. They're talking about cases now because deaths are so low. The left overreacts because that's what they do. It's not possible for the country to function if Americans aren't willing to put up with the tiniest amount of risk. But again, back to masks. They want you to be like Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin here. Can you believe that? Wearing a face shield and a mask. How embarrassing. First they said, don't wear a mask. Then they said, wear one. The left shamed everybody and everyone that didn't.
You're not wearing a mask. I can't buy you.
So the people there are just not worried about it, Cal? Are they not worried about their own personal safety?
But you can see, here, just around. Nobody's wearing them. Nobody's, the there you go, including the cameraman.
This is a wake-up call for people all across the country to wear their mask.
Oh, just attacked him. Oh my God.
And then they said no masks. Americans are confused. Biden promised if you get a vaccine, you can take them off. And when the CDC said take them off in May, Biden followed suit.
When your country asked you to get vaccinated, you did. The American people stepped up. You did what I consider to be your patriotic duty. That's how we've gotten to this day. If you've been fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask. Let me repeat, if you are fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask.
And now they're taking it back again. Biden tried defending his turnaround on Thursday and flipped out on Fox's Peter Doocy.
In May, you made it sound like the vaccine was the ticket to losing the mask forever. And
that is true at the time, because I thought there were people who were going to understand that getting vaccinated made a gigantic difference. And what happened was, the new variant came along, they didn't get vaccinated, it was spread more rapidly, and more people were getting sick. That's the difference.
Threatening Americans, telling them it's a matter of life and death. And now he's telling federal employees they have to get vaxxed. Our military now has to wear masks, social distance, regularly test, and have travel restrictions if they can't or won't get vaxxed. The left just wants a permanent pandemic. They want to control you, what you put on your face, what you
stepped up. You did what I consider to be your patriotic duty. That's how we've gotten to this day. If you've been fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask. Let me repeat, If you are fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask.
And now they're taking it back again. Biden tried defending his turnaround on Thursday and flipped out on Fox's Peter Doocy.
In May, you made it sound like the vaccine was the ticket to losing the mask forever. And
That is true at the time, because I thought there were people who weren't going to understand that getting vaccinated made a gigantic difference. And what happened was, a new variant came along, they didn't get vaccinated, it was spread more rapidly, and more people were getting sick. That's the difference.
Threatening Americans, telling them it's a matter of life and death. And now he's telling federal employees they have to get vaxxed. Our military now has to wear masks, social distance, regularly test, and have travel restrictions if they can't or won't get vaxxed. The left just wants a permanent pandemic. They want to control you, what you put on your face, what you say, how you run your business. They don't have the facts, so they push the fear. They're devoted to dividing Americans into bitter camps for political gain, the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. It's like the new race hustle. DC's going crazy. They reimposed their indoor mask mandate, even if you're vaxxed, anybody over 2 years old. Ready? There's been one COVID death in July, all of DC. One, which has a population of 700,000 people. There were more homicides in that time frame in July. And yet they decided, let's punish those who actually got the shot. The White House says D.C. is a hot zone. Yet there were 21 COVID patients in D.C. hospitals as of Monday. It gets worse, though. Now, if you're visiting the Capitol and not wearing a mask, you'll be arrested, but cross the border with COVID illegally, and you get a free bus ticket to any city you want. By the way, who brought COVID to the Capitol in the first place? It was the Texas Democrats who fled their state. And yet Pelosi's calling House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy a moron.
Nothing to say about that except we honor it.
Leader McCarthy says it's against the science.
What's moronic is punishing the good people of D.C. Congressman Chip Roy ripped Democrats for their moronic behavior.
We have a crisis at our border, and we're playing footsie with mask mandates in the people's house. I mean, it's absolutely absurd what this body is doing, the people's house. It's an embarrassment. It's a mockery. And the American people are fed up. They want to go back to life. They want to go back to business. They want to go back to school without their children being forced to wear masks. And the speaker comes down here at 10 o'clock in the morning saying, we got to wear masks in the people's house? While we've got thousands of people pouring across our border and Democrats don't do a darn thing about it, heavily infected with COVID. We are absolutely sick and tired of it, and so are the American people. This institution is a sham, and we should adjourn and shut this place down.
If Democrats are really so worried about COVID, why aren't they doing anything about our open borders? Biden was elected on the promise of stopping COVID, but he's the one letting it in and then blaming us for rising cases. At the Mexican border, there was just a 900% increase in the number of COVID-positive migrants who were detained in the Rio Grande Valley. And that's just one section of the border. He closed the Canadian border, but not the Mexican one. Canada cases are down, while Mexico's cases way up. It's ridiculous. Why should we take anything he says about COVID seriously? And then when will the CDC recommend we close the border? Fauci, meanwhile, at the center stage again of the mask and COVID confusion.
There is no need to change anything that you're doing on a day-by-day basis. Right now, the risk is still low.
It was just bad. It is bad now. I think these numbers are so stunning.
If you're a healthy young person, that there is no reason, if you want to go on a cruise ship, to go on a cruise ship. It is not a good idea to travel, period, in the United States. People should not be walking around with masks.
Well, if one mask is good, it makes common sense that maybe two masks are better.
And now he's saying the CDC hasn't flip-flopped at all on masks. You know it's bad when even MSNBC is questioning them.
Can you explain why we are discussing vaccine mandates and why we're looking at a mask mandate all over again? Because there are some who say, oh, well, the CDC doesn't know what it's doing. What is it going to be today?
The CDC hasn't really flip-flopped at all.
And why are these fully vaccinated media personalities urging the government to mandate that they wear masks again? If they're fully vaxxed, why would they have to wear masks? And if they want to wear one, go right ahead. No one's stopping you. Now, Donald Trump handed Biden a vaccine and an economy on the rise. But Joe's blowing it. He's botching the economic recovery. Businesses are now scared to bring back their workers after this mask guidance. People are canceling their plans, planning to stay home now because they're all freaked out. He's shattering confidence in the vaccines, and he keeps changing his tune and guidelines every single month. The only thing he and the CDC are achieving is scaring us, or confusing us, or just annoying me. Speaking of annoying, CNN's Don Lemon has a message for the unvaccinated.
Don't get the vaccine, you can't go to the supermarket. Don't have the vaccine, can't go to the ball game. Don't have the vaccine, can't go to work. You don't have the vaccine, can't come here. No shirt, no shoes, no service. All these people were saying, I don't want to put this stuff in my body. They're out drinking on the weekend and putting other substances in their bodies. That's way worse for them than a vaccine. So come on, let's be real.
There it is, all about control. The left wants to tell you what you can and can't do. Why wouldn't you be able to go to the supermarket when over half the country's vaxxed, but you could go to the supermarket last year when nobody was vaxxed? Democrats are also continuing their quest for control by pushing vaccine passports. Now, vaccine passports aren't about saving lives. They're about punishing people who aren't vaxxed. Biden's even looking into if the federal government can impose mask mandates on the whole country.
Why not push for vaccine mandates in states, private companies, schools? Do you want to see those entities pass vaccine mandates?
Well, I'd like to see them continue to move in that direction, and that's why I pointed out. I had asked the Justice Department to determine whether they're able to do that legally, and they can. It's still a question whether the federal government can mandate the whole country. I don't know that yet.
Although I got the vaccine myself and encourage everybody to, you can't punish Americans for not injecting themselves with a brand new vaccine. Encourage, but you can't punish. Without freedom, we have nothing. The U.S., our Constitution, our entire social fabric is not going to be permanently changed by a virus that we nearly defeated. We basically beat this thing in a year. Daily deaths at an all-time low, and COVID-19 isn't even in the top 5 leading causes of death in America right now. But we're stuck acting like every day is D-Day. No, we're in mop-up mode, basically. Everything's open and has been for months. More than half the country's vaccinated, and more continue to get shots every day. Everyone's flying, eating, making out, enjoying their lives. If this was Ebola, then yeah, you push hard for 100% vaccination. But COVID, even before vaccines, had a 98% survival rate. And now that it's even higher if you're vaxxed. Americans have all this information. They know the risks. You can only push so far, but the left won't stop. They're pushing and keeping us in this permanent pandemic. The left's always saying the right wing is moving towards authoritarianism, but they're the ones that want to force injections into Americans' arms, then censor you for speaking out against it. What's more authoritarian than that? Joining me now to react, author of The Authoritarian Moment, How the Left Weaponized America's Institutions Against Dissent, Ben Shapiro. All right, Ben, before we get to the book, which is great, what is your reaction to this craziness regarding masks?
It is madness, and it's not rooted in anything resembling logic or data. And the simple fact of the matter is that, as you mentioned, Jesse, if you have had the vaccine, you're essentially safe from this virus. And if you haven't had the vaccine at this point, it's been out there for months. You've had every ability to get it. You can get it today if you want it. But you are a rational adult. You can make your own risk assessment. And now whatever happens is on you. The notion that we have to mask up everybody who's vaccinated to protect the unvaccinated, or that whatever Joe Biden says about masking is going to be effective anyway across the country, is asinine on its face. Beyond that, the undermining of confidence in the vaccine is the big takeaway, I think, for a lot of Americans who are sort of on the fence. If you go out there and you keep saying over and over and over that people who are vaccinated are still transmitting, people who are vaccinated are still creating risk, a lot of people out there are going to say to themselves, their big takeaway is the vaccine is not working the way that you said it was working, which, of course, is not true. The vaccines are working. They are working to prevent hospitalization. They're working to prevent death. But at a certain point, you have to say to the American people, you're on your own now.
Yeah.
You know, go back to regular life. The movement of the goalpost here has been astonishing. At the beginning, it was 2 weeks to slow the spread. Don't overwhelm the hospital system. So we did that. Then it was wait until the vaccines are available. Then we did that. And then it was wait until all adults have had the opportunity to get the vaccine. And we did that. So what are the goalposts now other than something that is utterly impossible, zero COVID? And yet that's what the Democrats and the White House seem to be focused in on.
Treat us like adults. That's all we're asking for. All right, so I was flipping through this the other day, the authoritarian moment. I thought it was really great, and I highly recommend it. We're looking at this movement, which you describe, a few pillars, this constant revolution and destruction of everything that's come before us, this censorship from the top down, and this kind of moral superiority that everybody that disagrees with you is evil. Tell us what this left-wing authoritarian movement looks like, and are you scared of it?
I mean, I think that most Americans are scared of it at this point, not only from the government, but I think predominantly these days from sort of the social sphere. So every major institution that impacts our lives has now been renormalized by a group of very aggressive radical leftists who have taken those institutions and weaponized them against us, whether you're talking about the entertainment sphere or whether you're talking about education, whether you're talking about the institutions of science or whether you're talking about the media, whether you're talking about social media, or whether you're talking about the corporation you work for. There is a feeling by most Americans that if they say what they think, that they could be ostracized from everyday society, fired from their job, excised from the body politic. They're not wrong to think that. By polling data, every single political group in the United States, with the exception of people who consider themselves staunch far leftists, feel that they are not able to speak up publicly for fear of repercussions.
And you spell that out well, that the majority of the American people actually agree with us, but we're being dominated by a very tyrannical minority, and we're letting it happen to us. In the book you describe, and I want to zero in on this, something people can do in order to resist the cancel culture and the oppression that a lot of people on the right feel, especially predominant in corporate America. What would be your suggestion when you're just being inundated with this diversity training all the time and you feel like you can't speak freely at your office? How do you suggest Americans counter that?
And the best way to do that is to organize and unify with other people at your company. And it doesn't require 50% of your company to push back. To understand what you have to do, you have to understand that what the left really has done is they've taken about 20% of each institution, and then they've been very aggressive and very intransigent, and they've waited for all the people in the middle to just collapse out of fear or risk aversion or conflict aversion. Well, you can do the same thing from the other side. If you can get 20% of your company to write the bosses and say, listen, these guys over here, they want us to have Ibram X. Kendi in here to indoctrinate us about the evils of whiteness. We're not going to do that. Perhaps your boss says in response, okay, you know what? We're not. We're just going to be neutral on these issues, because all that the right has to do here is push these institutions back into neutrality, not into right-wing orientation. Just back into neutrality would be good enough.
All we're asking for is respect and neutrality. And you mentioned something in the book about hatred. And I talked about it in my book, and Mark Levin discussed this, the kind of mass psychology that is involved in these radical movements. Explain what you mean when you say they hate us.
And one of the elements of radical left-wing authoritarianism is this feeling of unending moral superiority, the feeling that people they oppose are not just wrong, those people are evil, and that justifies anything that you want to do against them. And you can feel that, right? Whether you're getting Twitter mobbed for an old comment, or whether at your corporation you didn't post the right black square at the right time of the year, and now your bosses are screaming at you and people are targeting you. I mean, there's no question that the polarization is coming from the left at this point.
And you mentioned that, too, that people that you were friendly with on the left wouldn't wish you happy birthday publicly. They'd have to do it behind closed doors or direct messages because they could not be seen being nice to Ben Shapiro. So again, The Authoritarian Moment, it's a good book. I don't know why I'm promoting this. You're just going to knock me farther down the bestseller list, but it is worth reading, and I appreciate, Ben, you coming on to Walter's World.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it.
Okay, rival monkey gangs clash in Thailand. You got to see this. And up next, parents going nuts over some of these mask mandates. You should see what the left is planning for schools in the fall.
Know when to fold up, know when to walk.
Refuses to commit to kids going to school in person this September.
What's happening now is that Delta threw us a real curveball, and the lack of the herd immunity and enough people being vaccinated, and kids not being able to get vaccines 12 and under, has really thrown this curveball. So the bottom line is we're going to keep kids safe, we're going to keep our members safe, and we're going to try to open up schools, and we're going to try to move through this political battlefield.
Joining us now to discuss, former Education Secretary and Fox News contributor Bill Bennett. All right, Mr. Bennett, so I have a theory about what's going on here. They say this is a curveball, Delta, that's BS. They're either squeezing us for more taxpayer money, or they're lying about the amount of teachers that have been vaccinated, because probably they haven't and don't want to go back. Or some of these teachers just don't want to go back to the classroom. They want to stay at home and do the remote thing. In your opinion, what's going on here?
I'll take C. That is, I think they've gotten used to the sedentary life or the vacation life. They're getting paid full-time salaries, and they will continue to get paid. Every hint, every suggestion of a virus, maybe even just a common cold, and they're going to say maybe we ought to shut it down. So Randy Weingarten has given warning that this could be their disposition. Parents are furious. They are right to be furious. Several things to be furious about in the schools. The fact that they're not opening is one of them.
Yeah, when you combine critical race theory with not opening again in the fall, I think there's going to be another million mom march that the Biden administration is going to have to contend with. Something really sickening and disturbing is happening in LA. I believe what they're doing there is testing every single teacher, student, and administrator every week, whether they've been vaxxed or not. And everybody has to wear a mask. I feel like that's almost borderline abuse at this point.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And what they've done here is they'll infuriate the parents even further, and they'll make the teachers angry, and the teachers may go on strike, and this will give them another reason not to go back to class. But you're right about critical race theory. I'm ambivalent about whether the schools should open. Given what they are teaching in a lot of our schools, I am ambivalent. Here's what I want to see. I want to see full choice. In the state of West Virginia, the money is attached to the child's backpack. It goes wherever the child goes. Public school, private school, Catholic school, homeschooling. You don't like what's going on? The teachers don't show up? School isn't open? You don't like what they're teaching? You go somewhere else, and more options are opening up. This could be the pivot point, Jesse, for a real change in education, and I'm hoping it is. And they can thank their own bad behavior on several fronts, not showing up and then showing up with bad stuff.
Well, Greg Gutfeld made the exact same point that Bill Bennett did. So if Bill Bennett and Greg Gutfeld agree on something, it's got to be true. All right, Secretary.
I did my PhD thesis. Under Professor Gutfeld.
Yes.
I studied under him.
Yes, Professor Gutfeld. I think that should scare every child in America. Thank you very much, Secretary. We really appreciate you coming on Water's World.
Thank you, Jesse. My pleasure.
Crime Watch, shocking crimes caught on camera. It's happening all over the nation, and we're going to analyze with our favorite Philly detective next.